This home video, unique of its kind, is a warning. It was put together by Mr. father of Peter and responsible for shooting the footage. Even as we tell you of it now, this story has only just reached its conclusion. As you are about to hear, Peter's father doesn't tell us everything, far from it, and a lot of things remain mysterious. Wherever possible, we have tried to cast some light on those shadowy areas. The 30th October 1979, my son and his mother leaving the hospital. Peter was born on the 14th October. The examinations were endless. I haven't found the matron. I'm convinced she lied to us. 16 days after his birth, Peter at last came home, and our life changed. We didn't go out anymore. We didn't have anyone round. In these pictures, Peter is exactly a month old. Since we got back from hospital, we hadn't noticed anything out of the ordinary. His mother and I were happy and regaining our confidence. At 3 months, Peter was a very quiet child who smiled in his sleep, so we were sure that any danger was remote. Here, for reasons we don't know, the father's commentary ceases for several minutes. We'll get it back later. The images which follow perhaps explain this silence. It seems it all started towards the 6th month. Watch carefully. The mother is playing with Peter. While his mother's attention is elsewhere, the child looks up at his toy and the toy rises. It was the father who slowed down these images himself by way of silent commentary on this thing they'd been dreading all along. It is now the 14th of October 1980. What has happened over the last 6 months, we shall never know. The parents enter the room and find the curtains of the bed, as you can see, in disorder. These knots, which the father comes back onto, prove it could not have been merely a breeze or the curtains coming unhooked while the child was asleep, but that it was the child himself who exercised his willpower on them. And if any more proof was needed, the child provided it the very next day, the 15th of October, when once again they found the curtains, this time in an improbable and, it must be said, rather disturbing position, and the parents do not hide their emotion. But how can they have let him do it? It's unlikely that they would not have kept an eye on the child, alerted by the events of the day before. But those images we will never see, since they doubtless confirm to the parents that Peter would never be like other children. Here, our little boy is 18 months old. He has been under the doctors for 6 months. We are told that it will all pass given time, and that we should carry on as if nothing was happening. It's true that at first Peter only used his power on insignificant things, but despite all our efforts, we had trouble coming to terms with the extraordinary. And as time passed, what happened was the exact opposite of what they had predicted to us, as we finally understood on Christmas Day, when Peter, who was 3½, started to truly master his power. As you will see, twice he managed to unhook the balls from the tree, just one at first, but then he was so proud of what he'd done that he kept 3 of them up above his head with an ease that was entirely new. This was the first time he managed to displace several objects at the same time. During these moments, Peter was so happy that we were quite disarmed. It was my parents who advised me to do laboratory experiments. I'll remember this day all my life. Peter was in an isolation chamber, and a man was asking him to make the foam rubber ball in front of him move. Peter couldn't do it and seemed completely lost. We couldn't speak to him. So what was he thinking of? Did he think we'd leave him there? Was he afraid of something? We never spoke roughly to him. Did he feel threatened by this doctor, who kept giving him orders? Did the man use a gesture or expression that Peter could have misinterpreted? We have asked ourselves these questions, and many others, over and over again, trying to find an explanation for what happened. Peter tried to explain that he couldn't do anything with the ball, so the doctor asked him to concentrate on him and to look into his eyes. Peter complied, and a few seconds later the doctor staggered out of the room and said to us, "I pity you, he's a monster." Ever since that day, we've kept Peter completely isolated, fearing that he might turn into a fairground attraction. Sensing what he was capable of, we saw nobody anymore. We lived with his power like a handicap that had to be completely hidden. We were helpless, we didn't know what to do. But these little family moments remind me how happy the 3 of us were. We were living a sort of secret life, completely turned in on ourselves, and I don't think we ever realized just how used to it Peter had become. He didn't mind at all spending his days in the garden with no one for company except his parents and the dog he was so intensely attached to. Here, the father's commentary stops once again. The rest is written in haste, but from what we have heard, we can have an idea of the final drama. Look carefully at this photo, which brings together everyone. We have good reason to believe it was taken on the eve of the terrible events. Who would think from these smiling faces that in a matter of a few hours this family will be doubly hit? Our inquiry has established that the next day they were all to go to home of the school, specializing in children who, like Peter, show the particularities that you now know about. The first words scribbled by the father are, "I told him that we wouldn't be able to take the dog." Peter's reaction is not slow in coming. It is every bit as intense and final as the love he had for the animal. He couldn't take the idea of being separated, continues the father, and there was nothing we could do to calm him down. What Peter is capable of is terrifying. What happened a bit later when his mother attempted to reason with him, I was not able to film. What happened was an accident. I am leaving this cassette behind as testimony. Don't anybody try to find us. It's not his fault. I love my son. This story reached its denouement less than a year ago. After the events you have just seen, Mr. fled with Peter into a mountainous region. They would hide there for 7 years. During the winter of 1990, Mr. fell gravely ill. Peter, who was just 11 years old, decided to go down to the valley. He managed to cross the snowed-in hills and thus save the life of his father. Today, Peter has lost none of his powers and is cared for in a specialist institute.